Our prayer is to lead more people to Jesus Christ.
And to be the light in this world for Him.
My prayer is that for this initiative, God will be able to use it to bring more to Him.
My prayer is that God will use this church to multiply the children of God.
My prayer is that the church here at Hebron gets on fire for the gospel like we've never seen before.
It is our prayer for our church that we build a bigger and better church body who is on fire for the Lord.
My prayer is that we reach more students.
Prayer for this initiative is that our new buildings would be a vessel for the community and that we would be able to bring specifically students in, and that I would see a lot of my friends come to Christ.
My prayer is for our student ministry to grow.
I'm praying that this will be just a haven for the lost in our community.
My hope for this initiative is that more people will start coming to church.
My prayer for the Church of Hebron is to win as many souls for Christ.
And our prayer is that our grandkids will all come to know the Lord, and that this initiative will help all that happen.
Our prayer is that we would grow closer to Jesus and that we would live unashamedly and sacrificially for Him.
My prayer is that more people would use their gifts to serve.
My prayer is that God will continue, when they're our age, using our church to do His work. I pray that we're a church that desires to reach the lost, to make disciples, and that the gifts that we have are going to be used for that going forward.
All right, hey, good morning, everybody. So good to see you here on this, I would call it a beautiful Sunday. I think it's good. We got sun's out, and it's a touch of warmth to it. We're really glad that you are here. And I guess this is like a Thanksgiving week for our families in the community. I think school is off this week. I think that's accurate. And so, I hope you get a chance to enjoy this week. Well, Mike mentioned about our For the One initiative. And so if you're newer to the church at Hebron, I just want to kind of give you a bigger picture. We are a part of Florence Baptist Church. So there's 2 campuses, 2 locations. We have one off of Mount Zion Road. That's our Mount Zion location. And then we have the church at Hebron here. And we are a church that's in the community for the community. And we want to be a church that exists not just for the people inside the walls of this building on a Sunday morning, but for people outside the walls, people who need to hear about Jesus, who may have never heard about Jesus, so they could hear and put their faith and trust in Him. And so we have this initiative called For the One. And we have 2 campuses and 2 locations, 2 beautiful properties that God has given to us that we want to develop and use in such a way that we will be able to reach as many people as possible. And so during the course of this past year, Travis Kaiser, our lead pastor, introduced the vision for this. And so we are excited to see what God is doing. And so this morning, what I want to do is just kind of give you an update in terms of where we are. This is kind of like the quiet time in the initiative. We introduced it and we launched it, and we just want to kind of share with you briefly what's been going on. At our Mount Zion location, we are looking to build a double gym. And so we're excited about what we're able to do there I think there's like 80 acres roughly somewhere around there. Pat, am I close on that? Is it 8? Yep. So we're looking to kind of develop that land and use it in a way that honors the Lord and helps people connect with Jesus. And so part of this double gym is that process, step 1, phase 1. And so in this kind of quiet time, things have been working behind the scenes. And so we have been going through the architectural drawings and that whole architectural process. And we're about 75% of the way done at this point. And so if you have a background in construction, you understand that architectural kind of pre-phase is an important phase, and it takes some time. And so that's going to be the case for us. Now, we have advisors who have been helping us as a church, and they tell us that we are on track in this process. And so that's really great to hear. It's a good encouragement from people who have done this before. And so we're glad that we're on track, but we're continuing that process. During this time, by the way, as we introduced the For the One initiative, the Lord has brought an additional 161 new givers into our church. And so we're really grateful for that. And thank you for your generosity. Yeah. And we are really thankful thankful for your generosity in giving to Jesus by giving to the church at Hebron as well as to Florence Baptist Church. To date in our process, now if you're newer, this is not going to necessarily make any sense, but we just want to kind of update our church family. But to date, we have $836,000 that have already been given toward that. So again, thank you for your generosity in that. That is about 108% of expected giving to this point. So really great job. We appreciate that. Now let me just kind of get specific at both locations. We'll talk more about our location here, though. We are looking to turn dirt in the spring at our Mount Zion location. That would be kind of the goal for the double gym. Here at our Hebron location, two things that we're focused on that we know of at the present moment are, one, we're focused on a playground, an outdoor playground area for our kids and specifically to be able to kind of connect with the community, but also with our present kids as well. And then additional parking. And so if you stick around on a normal Sunday, you will see that we do not actually have full parking just on the pavement, that we have to park in the grass. And so that works well until it starts snowing and raining and all that kind of stuff, and then it becomes a challenge. And so God has been so good to us in this process. As we identify these two things, in the course of time, God has, okay, we'll put it this way. God has allowed us to purchase a playground area for our church at Hebron, where that's already happened in the last couple months. And so the story is really cool. Yep. So I probably should have asked permission beforehand, but it's better to ask forgiveness than permission. Is that right? But David Whitehouse has been a huge help to us in this process. And so in the course of time, he connected us with someone, and there's a company, somebody ordered a playground area for themselves in the state of Kentucky, and they got that shipped to them. They were missing a part, and so they got the part shipped to them that they were missing, but it wasn't just the part. They shipped to them another whole playground area. And so in the processes of that company connected with us and said, hey, would you be interested in this? And we said, yes, we would definitely be interested. And they gave us a really generous discount on this, a substantial, generous discount. And it's just the way the Lord provided. Not very long right after we were like, hey, we need playground space. And here it is. And so a reminder that as you pray about these things and watch the Lord work, and David has been super instrumental in that process, and we appreciate him helping us with that. Now, where we want to put that is straight out this way. And I did actually before the service, because I'm directionally challenged at times, I want to make sure that I was right. But it is actually out this way. And so, but it's a slanted area here in our 1 acre of property. And so we are going to need to get that leveled out. And so we're potentially trying to figure out ways to do that at the same time as we potentially put out some additional parking. And so we're in the process of doing that right now. I don't exactly know how all this is going to work out timeline-wise. We'd certainly love it to, a personal goal of mine would be for Easter to have all that taken care of, but don't hold me to that. Don't hold anybody to that, okay? So, but we're potentially working through those things, and we're doing work behind the scenes here. So as they're doing architectural stuff at Mount Zion, we're working behind the scenes here, working on parking and playground area, and God has been faithful in all of this. And so we appreciate your generosity. Continue to pray as we continue to see the Lord work in great ways at both locations. Now, let me just transition a little bit to Hope Boxes. And you saw the Hope Boxes that were in our lobby for about the better part of a month as we were collecting food to give to underprivileged in our area. I'm excited to be able to tell you that we collected over 1,223 Hope Boxes. And so, again, we are cognizant of something called giving fatigue. We do pay attention to those things that sometimes people can end up having to give a ton of things and just can become fatigued at that process. And you guys have been very generous, and so we are grateful for that. Of those 1,223 boxes, 1,138 have already been pledged to be given out. In fact, if you were with us on Wednesday night at Arcadia Apartments, we delivered a whole slew of those boxes to some retirement community apartments in the Florence area, and so we were thrilled to be able to do that. If you do know of some people that maybe potentially could use those things, certainly talk to Mike and myself, and we would be happy to try to connect and get those boxes there. But we are grateful for your generosity through Hope Ministries. Ditson's doing a great job, and that team is doing a great job. If you would like updates on the For the One initiative, you're like, I have no idea what you're talking about, Neal. This is my first Sunday. I have no idea what this is. There's a website on the screen behind me at florencebaptist.org/fortheone. It will give you all the information that you need about it, plus updates and just things that we are doing in this process. There's one more thing that I want to mention to you about this For the One initiative. The really cool thing here is that it is always about people. And so at both of our locations, during this process, we actually took some time during a service and wrote the names of our ones on a wall. These are people that we love and care about, that we would love to see come to believe in Jesus as their Savior and experience forgiveness and grace like we have. And so on our wall here to the left, you can see that, and then at Mount Zion, it's the same way. And somebody wrote this, that we have a group of people that have been praying throughout the week at Mount Zion, just really praying the wall, praying the names, praying for those individuals to put their faith and trust in Jesus. We're trying to figure out ways to be able to make that happen here at our Hebron location, even though the building isn't open like Mount Zion is open during the week. And so we have to figure that out. But we're working on ways to do that. Anyway, there's a group of guys that have been praying specifically, but there's more than just that. And anyway, recently they saw this little note posted up on the wall, and it says Manny, that was the name of the person, and it said Manny said yes to Jesus on October 5th, 2025. And so, yeah, just really, really cool stuff. And we do this for people because one day this building is going to crumble, and one day the buildings that we are currently building are going to crumble, but the lives of the people will not crumble. And in fact, we get to spend eternity with Jesus when we put our faith and trust in him. And so we're very excited about that. Thank you for your generosity in all this. And so if you have any questions, be sure to talk to Mike or I afterwards. I can tell you this, when I was a kid growing up on the playground, back in the day, way, way back in the day, the game that you played on the playground was kickball. And I don't know about you, that's probably maybe the case for you, but when you were in the concrete jungles of like little small elementary schools and whatever, and there wasn't a whole lot of like grass, this is what you played. And so every recess for 15 minutes, the morning recess and the afternoon recess was a game of kickball. Now, kickball was a social experiment. That's really what it is. Kickball is a social experiment, just happen to throw a ball in there. It's usually the way this works is that you choose two captains. And the two captains will then choose their teammates. And sometimes what would happen is people would choose their friends. That's typically what would happen. People would eventually just choose their friends in their class. Sometimes people wanted to win, right? So I was in that category. That would have been me. So the times that I got chosen as a captain, I didn't care whether they were my friends or not. I cared about how far they could kick a ball, right? And some of you probably feel that way as well. And so sometimes people chose their friends, other times they chose the athletic ones, and then other times it was really just simply straight up a popularity contest where they just wanted to choose the opportunity. This is the people that I wanted to spend time with, or these are the people that were cool in the third grade or the fourth grade. And so the fear of every young elementary schooler was being the last one chosen. And it felt like if that was the case for you, that you were rejected and nobody thought you were valuable. And the thing about kickball is that it is a social experiment that way. And it is a little bit of a representation of the way that a kingdom of this world thinks and processes. And so this morning, as we continue our Kingdom Collision teaching series, we're in part 2 of the Kingdom Collision teaching series, we are going to be looking at the kingdom of the world versus the kingdom of heaven. And how people get in. Because in the kingdom of the world, we are going to see that who gets in isn't always who you would expect. And so if you have a Bible, I would love for you to turn to the end of Matthew chapter 11. William, here we go. We're in Matthew chapter 11. The big idea this morning, the people in the kingdom of heaven. No, you can keep it. You can keep it. That's all right. The people in the kingdom of heaven aren't always who you would expect. And this is something that Jesus is going to help us see from the text this morning. There's kind of two chunks to the text. We see, first of all, in verses 25 to 30, we see that the children get into the kingdom while the wise, the rich, and the learned are out. And then in chapter 12, verses 1 to 13, we'll see the second part of that. Now, let's start to drill down here in the first 5 or 6 verses. Children get into the kingdom, and the wise and learned are out. Notice what Jesus says here, starting in Matthew chapter 11, verse 25. At that time, Jesus said, I praise you, Father, Lord of heaven and earth, because you have hidden these things from the wise and learned and revealed them to the little children. Yes, Father, for this is what you were pleased to do. All these things have been committed to me by my Father. No one knows the Son except the Father, and no one knows the Father except the Son, and those to whom the Son chooses to reveal him. Now, right off the bat in this text, we see that the kingdom of heaven has always been subversive to the kingdom of this world. What I mean by that is that the kingdom of this world favors the powerful. The kingdom of this world favors the prominent. But in Jesus' kingdom, it's different. The kingdom of heaven favors the humble. It favors the broken, which is the point of this comparison between children and the rich and the learned. It favors those who recognize their need and don't ignore it or explain it away. It favors those who are willing to admit when they are wrong instead of covering it up or blaming others. And I'm just telling you, this is not the way of the kingdom of the world. It is not the way of the modern culture. Our culture tends to try to cover up mistakes, not admit them. It tends to blame others for our problems, not own them. It demands that we act like we have it all together instead of to admit that we are flawed. And the contrast here is really interesting. I would argue that the contrast that we see going on here in these chapters, including the one that we're looking at here this morning, that the contrast here is actually a huge opportunity to reach our ones. It's a huge opportunity for the people that don't yet believe in Jesus to hear a vastly different kingdom than the kingdom of this world. Notice that in the text, there's a place in which Jesus says this is what the Father was pleased to do. That the contrast between the kingdom of heaven and the kingdom of the world, that it being about the humble and the broken is something that God is pleased with. And he's here called the Lord of heaven and earth, a reminder to us that God is active in the heavens, but he's also active here on the earth. And that when we're talking about the kingdom of heaven, it's kind of an already not yet. There's part of it that's going on now here on this earth, but it will reach its full culmination later when Jesus returns. But in the here and the now, we see proof of the reality of God being present in this world and actively working. Jesus is actually proof of that. What is Jesus called in Isaiah? Emmanuel, which means God with us. Jesus is proof that God is active in this world. The Holy Spirit, who, if you are a believer in Jesus, the Holy Spirit comes inside and dwells you and guides you and leads you and directs you. The Holy Spirit, the third person of the Trinity, is actually proof as well that God is active in this world. The Church of Jesus Christ is proof that God is active in this world. I talk about the church, I mean like specific local churches, like our church, and like Hebron Baptist Church, and like the Link Church, and then I'm talking about the worldwide church. All those individuals who have put their faith and trust in Jesus. The church is proof that God is working in the world. One of the great proofs, and for some of you, this was the proof that brought you across the faith line, the proof of a changed life. A life that was once living for itself, but now living for Jesus. A life that has hope, but didn't have hope before. And that life was radically changed. And it could be that you met someone whose life was radically changed. And as a result of that, you put your faith and trust in Jesus. Maybe you're the life that was radically changed. And so because of your life, someone put their faith and trust in Jesus. The point is simple. God is the God of both heaven and the earth. Yeah, he's active. He's in the heavens, but he's also here active on the earth. And these are proofs of that. And I love the fact that the text says that God is pleased with this. It's not like God is looking at the current situation here on this earth and he's like, I'm going to make lemons out of lemonade. This is what I don't really want, but I'll do it. That's not at all what is happening here. This kingdom, this type of kingdom that Jesus is talking about is exactly what the Father loves. It is exactly what the Father wants. Where the humble and broken find hope and healing, that kingdom is exactly what the Father wants. It pleases him. He loves it. And I would actually point out that to your ones as a way of sharing the gospel with them. Point out to them the way of the kingdom of heaven, the subversive nature of it. Because I'll tell you this, many of our ones have been rejected and canceled by this modern culture. They had their moment on top of the kingdom of this world. They had a job that they thought was going to lead them to success. They had a family situation that was great. They had a husband or a wife that they loved and loved dearly and thought was going to be the best. And then tragedy has struck and life has happened and they have been beat down and stuff has come crashing down quickly. And they get told in that moment that they're not valuable. They get told in that moment that they are broken and they are too broken to matter. But in the kingdom of heaven, it's the broken who get in. And specifically, we're all broken, okay? Even the people who don't think they're broken are actually broken. They just don't know that they're broken or refuse to admit that they're broken. But the broken who can admit that they are broken and run to Jesus, they experience forgiveness. They experience healing. That is the kingdom of heaven. And it's the ones that follow Jesus' advice and come to him and not try hard to earn forgiveness without him who get in. Notice the last 3 verses of Matthew chapter 11. Come to me, all who are weary and burdened, and I will give you rest. Take my yoke upon you and learn from me, for I am gentle and humble in heart, and you will find rest for your souls. For my yoke is easy and my burden is light. This is the kingdom of heaven. This is the way that is so refreshing and so unique and so different from that of the world that you and I, and the taste that we have of it here and now, we love it, we appreciate it, we find hope, and we want that same hope to be for our ones, the people on that wall, the people that we didn't write on that wall, the people you can still write on that wall, to pray for so that they will experience that same kingdom. Now, there's the second part of this that we see here. And this is really another countercultural thing, but it's even countercultural within the church, I think, or at least within religious circles. This second piece that we see in verses 1 to 13 of Matthew 12, the merciful get into the kingdom, and those who sacrifice are out. Let me maybe qualify that. The merciful get into the kingdom, and those who rely on their sacrifices are out. I want to read to you these 13 verses here in Matthew chapter 12. At that time, Jesus went through the grain fields on the Sabbath. And his disciples were hungry and began to pick some heads of grain and eat them. And when the Pharisees saw this, they said to him, "Hey, look, your disciples are doing what is unlawful on the Sabbath." And he answered them, "Haven't you read what David did when he and his companions were hungry? He entered the house of God, and he and his companions ate the consecrated bread, which was not lawful for them to do, but only for priests. Or haven't you read in the law that the priests on Sabbath duty in the temple desecrate the Sabbath, and yet are innocent? I tell you that something greater than the temple is here. If you had known what these words mean, I desire mercy, not sacrifice, you would not have condemned the innocent, for the Son of Man is the Lord of the Sabbath. And going on from that place, when he went into their synagogue, and a man with a shriveled hand was there, looking for a reason to bring charges against Jesus, they asked him, is it lawful to heal on the Sabbath? And he said to them, if any of you has a sheep and it falls into a pit on the Sabbath, will you not take hold of it and lift it out? How much more valuable is a person than a sheep? Therefore, it is lawful to do good on the Sabbath. And he said to the man, stretch out your hand. And so he stretched it out, and it was completely restored, just as sound as the other. But the Pharisees went out and plotted how they might kill Jesus. Now, in the middle of this section, we see the idea that the merciful get in, and those who sacrifice are out, because Jesus actually talks about that. But what we need to see here is a bigger picture thing. The whole Sabbath day observance at this point in Jesus' ministry, at this time when Jesus was alive, had kind of like taken on a life of its own. Way different from what God had given in the Old Testament. So the Pharisees and the religious leaders had taken something that God had given in the Old Testament and had completely jacked it up. They made all these new rules. Literally, there were scholars who dedicated themselves to studying these rules. There were so many rules about the Sabbath that you had to have scholars to tell you what it meant. That's what was happening at this time. They had so burdened the people with rules to observe in order to please God that they missed the entire reason why God gave them the Sabbath to begin with. It's what caused Jesus to say in Mark chapter 2, the Sabbath was made for man, not man for the Sabbath. And so what happens is you have this group of people driven by the religious leaders and the Pharisees who were all in on trying to sacrifice and do these things to earn favor, to get into the kingdom. And they were the kind of the preeminent religious people. And so those individuals were the people that people assumed were going to get into the kingdom of heaven. But Jesus is contrasting, saying, no, those are not the people that are going to get in. Sabbath keeping was kind of this way that people earned their standing before God. And so if you wanted to find the people that were trying to sacrifice their way in, it was the people that were trying to observe the Sabbath fully and completely with all these additional rules. And Jesus jumps in and he says, whoa, hold on. That Old Testament would talked about the Sabbath. It's pointing to the fact that the Sabbath was made for man, not man for the Sabbath. God meant for the Sabbath to show his grace and mercy to people, and for people to benefit and to recharge from it. It was never meant to be a proving ground for people's faith or as a burden for people to carry so they could demonstrate their faith. One of the things I joke around all the time with my parents, is that true when they retired, is that when my mother retired, she was busier than when she was working, right? Some of you feel that, like you retired recently and you're like, I'm busier now than when I was working. Okay, the whole point of relaxation is to relax. If it's more work to relax than it is to work, you're missing the point of relaxation. All right, that's the point of it. Like some of us struggle. I struggle to take a vacation. I mean, I can take vacation days, right? Mike does this too. He's the same issue. You take vacation days, but you don't actually vacation or relax in those moments. Vacation days are meant to help you rest and recharge. They're not something for you to like as like a task for you to accomplish. And so what happens is in this story, in this instance, the Pharisees are actually making the rest days harder than the work days. Jesus is saying, no, that's not it. And to the greater point, the kingdom of heaven is for people who rest and trust in what Jesus has done, not doing things so that they can earn favor with God. And I would argue that this way of thinking continues to deceive people today. In fact, many people, both inside the church and outside the church, have the same idea as the Pharisees, that they earn their way to be right with God. If you work hard enough, you might be able to get in. You might be accepted. And the thing that makes Jesus so different is that he offers a fresh perspective. He offers real hope, because deep down, all of us realize that we can never really be good enough, or at least we can never really know for sure when we're going to be good enough. And plus, there's this place in the Bible where it says, be perfect. That's what that standard is. And so we're all out on that, myself included. Jesus says it's not the way it works. The kingdom of heaven is not something you get into by working hard and obeying rules. Instead, you get in by something that has been done for you. Grace and mercy alone from Jesus. Grace and mercy alone from Jesus. Jesus paid it all to him we owe. Sin had left a crimson stain, he washed it white as snow. It has always been about Jesus. The kingdom of heaven has always been about Jesus, and the way that we get in is by simply coming in humility and broken, saying, God, this is me, I give it all to you, and that it's all about what you have done for me. You see, at the end of the day, the answer spiritually is always outside of yourself and myself in the person of Jesus. Jesus shows grace and mercy to us. He offers forgiveness and a right standing before God through what he has done. And then what happens in that moment is it leads us to be gracious. It leads us to be merciful. The merciful that get in are the people who've received mercy and who are then just living that out in their lives in response to the mercy that they've been given. So instead of sacrificing and earning, we take a posture of graciousness and mercy, just like what we have received. The merciful, depending on the mercy of God in Jesus, get in. Now, I want to pull back here just as we conclude this morning and just look at the big picture. I want to give you 3 simple takeaways from our text this morning. The first one is this: come to Jesus, because he's already ready. He's always ready to take your burdens and to give you forgiveness and life. Too many people get close to Jesus, but never come to Jesus because they are insistent on carrying the spiritual burden of their sin on their own. It's not what Jesus intended. He's there, and he will put our sin as far as the east is from the west. Come to Jesus. Number 2, trusting in your good deeds to get favor and forgiveness will always fall short. And so the thing is it feels so right. This is why we can't trust our feelings always. It feels so right. Like I'm gonna make up for this. We have code words and we have phrases that we use that sound really plausible, like they're true and stuff like that. But you and I can't make up for our sin. That's not how it works. The kingdom of heaven is way different. And it doesn't mean that you shouldn't seek to obey and follow Jesus. It just means that even your best falls short. There's a place in Isaiah, all our righteousness are as filthy rags. The best we can do falls short. You are going to exhaust yourself and have nothing to show for it if you try to earn your way to heaven. And so the order of the kingdom of heaven is very important. Jesus came, lived a sinless life, died on the cross, rose from the dead, we repent from our sin and our shortcomings, then we trust in Jesus and his sacrifice, and he creates new creations in our lives where we then respond with good deeds in response to his grace. And third, in the kingdom of this world, you may be a nobody, but in the kingdom of heaven, you can be a somebody. In the kingdom of this world, you may be a nobody, but in the kingdom of heaven, you can be a somebody. William's holding a kickball this morning, and you may be one of those individuals. Maybe you got picked 11th out of 10 people in kickball when you were in 3rd grade, and you felt that pain, and you felt that suffering of feeling like you've been excluded from the world. And in this world, you will have other kickball games where you feel that way. But trust me when I say this, in the kingdom of heaven, you are somebody because you've been forgiven and you have received grace. So next time you see a kickball game happening, may that remind you of how the kingdom of the heaven is way different than the kingdom of this world. Will you pray with me?